Hello people, and welcome back to another City Skylines tier video. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to have a look at the Parklife DLC maps and find out exactly where they fall on our little tier list chart here. Of course, these are all based on my own personal experience and preferences with the game, so if you feel I've played something too high or too low, as always, get your opinions down in the comments below. Otherwise, let's rank some Parklife DLC maps, shall we? So the first map we're coming up against here is Cavern Coast, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly, this is actually going to fall into digital bum cheeks. So Cavern Coast has no rail connection and very little oil, and a 61% buildable area, all within the tropical theme. Taking a look at those natural resources, big chunks of ore and fertile land are knocking about the vast majority of the northern half of the map anyway, and very little tiny pockets of oil, so if you're playing with oil depreciation on, these will not last very long at all. But there are very small oil fields available. If you are interested in the wind turbines, here is the wind map for Cavern Coast. The map is not the most friendly to 821 tiles. Along the west and the north, you are mainly unlocking more ocean, and then in the east and the south, it's pretty mountainous, so really not friendly at all to 821 tiles. But if you want that extra room, then you can get it. And indeed, if you want to be doing some fishing, then this is your fishing map for Cavern Coast. Lots of shellfish, and a little spattering of tuna with some bits of anchovy knocking around near the coastlines and the lakes as well. Okay guys, so first of all let me talk about exactly why I don't like this map. It's got a few things wrong with it in my opinion, and in my preference as well. Definitely playing a City Skylines map, these are things I would not enjoy. So the starting tile has about a quarter of it being mountains, although there is some ore over here as well, so you can get involved in some early ore builds if you like. Now I have popped 81 tiles here, and look at the highways, right? These are not great at all. So yeah, the highways on Cavern Coast are probably some of the worst I've ever seen. I know we do have full map completion here. This is a place where I can draw in a road. We are within the 81 tile boundary here. This isn't anything to do with the 81 tile radius, this is just how the highways sit. And now I do understand every time I criticize a highway, I usually get a few comments saying that not every highway everywhere in the world is straight, and I totally agree with that. They're definitely not around here as well, but they definitely don't do this. Right? There's no ramp, there's no hunchback. You would totally catch airtime coming off of this ramp system, right? It's extremely dangerous. And this theme repeats throughout the entire map. Cavern Coast highways are like this everywhere. It doesn't get any better. It's horrific. It really takes away from your builds. Awful. Really bad highways, alongside vanilla highway intersections as well, which is not something we really mark down for, but something we certainly mention. The next thing I don't really like about this map, alongside its starting tile and its horrendous highways, is its terrain. You will struggle to find any at all at any sort of flat space, which isn't necessarily a bad thing on its own, but when it's the entire map, and you will constantly be building on a slope, which really affects the way that your builds look, for me that would really take away the enjoyment of actually playing on Cavern Coast, is knowing that I am constantly and nearly always, wherever you go in the map, fighting the gradient. But otherwise, taking a look around elsewhere in the map, it very much does live up to its name of kind of Cavern Coast. There are lots of these kind of like cavernous looking ridges and valleys and cliffs and peaks and whatnot, with the vanilla terraforming all knocking around some inland lakes, which, to be fair to this bit, there would be some nice maybe lakefront opportunities around here. Again, if not the terrain right up against the lake shore is extremely steep, which would just make building on it such a nightmare. Like, if you want to build on a tropical coastal map, go and build on Rosalind Peninsula or something. Not this. Not this one. Coming down to its respective namesake of the coastline here, we do have some vanilla detail in bits and pieces. Of course, which everyone's used to by now, some broken piers and lighthouses, and old knackered freight containers, which are pretty much the same size as the lighthouse, which makes you question the scale. So all in all, with its pretty terrible terrain, nasty highways, no rail connection, very little ore, pretty bad starting tile, and near total unfriendliness to 81 tiles, Cavern Coast very much falls into one of the worst DLC maps that you can play in City Skylines. Next up on the Parklife map tier list is Honu Island, and this for me falls into a middle of the road B tier. So Honu Island is another tropical themed map with all available outside connections, a 45% buildable area, and basically zero fertile land. Taking a look at the natural resources, there are enormous amounts of forestry and oil in this map, alongside some decent sized ore pockets as well. The only spot of fertile land you're getting is out on these islands, very small patch, so you'll essentially have no farmland here without extra landscaping tools. Wind map as expected, the peaks and the coastlines are extremely windy, with the inland not receiving much at all. Your terrain map, a good chunk of the mainland is relatively easy to build on, although the 81 tile radiuses are all significant mountains or ocean, and indeed the fishing a nice mix of pretty much everything, with some resistance of anchovy holding out amongst the shellfish. So Honu Island, it definitely has some parallels to Cavern Coast. Again, this is unlocked with 81 tiles. We can build out here. This is not locked off by the weird jank that happens with a locked tile. And I feel like I need to mention, I realise that highways aren't totally straight and parallel across a large chunk of the world, but they don't do this, right? They don't have this up and down, bumpy, just lumps and bumps everywhere, right? they don't look like this. So it has to bring its score down for its extremely janky, bumpy highways again. Same with the rail. It just follows the terrain. It's not great. It's not great. But the rest of the map does make up for it. You do have some extremely nice wide waterways, and this is really a lake. It doesn't leave the map here. You do have the back boundary, although you are right up against the map edge here, so you probably won't end up building this far out. But nice lake that opens out into some island opportunities, which is very much where the Honu Island gets its namesake. So the vanilla bridges, nothing overly junky about these, nicely sensibly drawn in. We do just have regular vanilla interchanges, of course. This is your starting tile. So you do come out into mountain, but you also have a lot more flatter land in around the perimeter to build on. So nothing too gnarly with the terrain going on. And again, it does present some nice tropical island themes going on. However, the first thought that comes in when you see it is that there are better tropical maps. There's Rosalind Peninsula, Mountain Taper, are two that just come to mind immediately that are better than this one. Again, this bit over here, I'm much more happy with this sort of highway, right? So it can split across two different layers. I can think of a stretch of the M6 in England that has a section like this near me. But it's flat on both layers, which is how it should be, you know? It's been nicely engineered. It's not just flowing up and down wherever the terrain decides to take it. Over on the main landmass, you will run into some vanilla detailing alongside your highways. With your train line, so nothing overly special, but it's here if you do enjoy your little vanilla detailing props. And again, the terrain up and out in the southeastern mountains, super unfriendly for building. So if you're going to be popping 821 tiles on this map, a lot of this land is going to remain useless, unless you wanted to turn it into some kind of ore quarry. I guess I suppose you could paint in your own resource here. But other than that, it is very much kind of a slightly underwhelming, if not safe, tropical choice. There are better maps, as I've mentioned, Mountain Taper, Rosalind Peninsula are two that just come to mind. But if you're interested in trying a new tropical theme map with some fairly sensible terrain, some nice waterway opportunities, with some slight highway and network jank that can be corrected yourself, of course, then Honu Island will fall middle of the road in all those criteria. Next up on the Parklife map tier list is Mountain Meadows, and again, this one is going to fall into middle of the road B tier. So Mountain Meadows is a temperate themed map with a 69% buildable area, which is nice, and has very little ore and very little oil. Taking a look at those natural resources, we can see there is a bunch of fertile land clustered in and around the starting tile in the middle of the map, and those very small ore pockets over in the east, and a tiny amount of oil up in the northwest. Take a look at the wind, super windy. Wind turbine fans can rejoice here. All on the mountain peaks and the riverbanks you will get plenty of use out of. Take a look at terrain, very flat and super friendly to beginners in the middle, with pretty significant mountain peaks lying in pretty much all 4 points of the compass. And some fishing. It is very much tuna and shellfish orientated. So if the initial prognosis doesn't seem so bad, then why is it just a B tier map? And it's because it's so safe. It's just a very chill, kind of placid, temperate map. There's nothing amazing going on. The mountains are nice. Nothing horrifically against this sort of terraforming. I do enjoy the mountains. But lots of nice flat buildable space. We are losing the network jank that came with Honu Island and Cavern Coast. These are a little more, well, a lot more acceptable to be fair. And this river down here also serves as your sea connection. Even though it is just a river, you do still have seaports here as well. Your starting tile comes in right near some water and lots of fertile land, so some very nice small farming town opportunities available in the early game on Mountain Meadows. Again, simple vanilla interchanges, nothing overly designed for the networks. There is also some lighter specs and embellishments of vanilla detailing with some castles over here. But to be fair guys, that is kind of it. There's not vast amounts to talk about here. You've got a lot of flat temperate land, which is super great for farming. If you're looking to stay away from very heavy industrial builds, this might be a good map for you because you really only have farming as an option without mods. But if you're looking for some nice mountains, just a safe bet that's not going to push you too far out of your comfort zone with nice buildable space or your connections, very little industry outside of farming, then Mountain Meadows will do a job for you. But there are definitely more interesting temperate theme maps to be playing than this one. Next up on the Parklife map tier list is Pine Rivers, and this for me falls into just about a very respectable A tier. So Pine Rivers is a boreal themed map with a 84% buildable area and it has no sea connection. Whilst it does have all 4 available resources, the fertile land and oil is essentially non-existent, and we'll take a look at those natural resources. You can see there is little spatterings of ore knocking about with some very small stretches of fertile land. If you're a fan of industries, this is not the map for you. There is very little wind coverage on Pine Rivers, and for those spots that do have wind, they aren't really near the starting tile apart from a little dark spot. So if you're in after wind turbines, not the best map for them either. Taking a look at your terrain, of course, the Pine Rivers are very much the aesthetic appeal of this map, and we'll have a look at these in a minute. But nice flat buildable space all around the waterways with some rolling hills as opposed to mountains in the 4 corners of the map. And indeed, it is a anchovy and salmon convention in terms of fishing. You will be getting no shellfish or tuna on this map without terraforming. So again, the initial prognosis seems to be fairly underwhelming, so why indeed is it falling as an A tier map? And it's very much because of its rivers. It does live up to it, and take a look at the bird's eye view. What a wonderfully intricate and different water network this is compared to anything I've played, at least anyway. Lots of possibilities for little isolated separate towns linked together with walking pathways and maybe some dirt road bridge. The aesthetic of this map is very appealing and leads into some very unique builds, I think, with Pine Rivers. There is even a little bit of repeated conifer spice within the highway, which is appreciated, right? It's very small, but we always appreciate a very tiny amount of repeated tree patterns, and there is Palaban pines everywhere, just pines, right? There's Pine Rivers. But this is your starting tile, and then from here you can move down into the basin of the valley, and then start building around the waterways. And the thing that stops it from falling into must play, I think, is because the landscape away from the main network of rivers is fairly underwhelming. It is just very safe, fairly boring, rolling boreal hills. Nothing amazing about the landscaping away from the main centre here. And I realise an A tiering could possibly hold some controversy with it. This map definitely won't be for everyone, but if you're interested in working with some nice waterways in a boreal theme, which is always one of the better themes, and some nice, safe, buildable landscape with very little industry, then do give Pine Rivers a go. I'd be interested to see how we can all work with these really tight, narrow, intricate waterways. Really interesting map, and it's an A tier for me. And last, but certainly not least, on the Parklife map tier list is Winfield, and this, for me, again, is going to fall into a very respectable A tier map. So Winfield is a temperate themed map with all available outside connections, a 65% buildable area. It does have all available natural resources, but very little ore. Taking a look at those natural resources, we have splits of fertile land, ore and oil, pretty much mainly split across the northern part of the map near the coastline. Very little wind spots apart from near your starting tile and towards the coast and the mountain peaks, but not too bad that we've seen today. Terrain, super flat and easy to build on, very friendly towards beginners, with some more challenging mountain peaks in the northeast and southeast and west as well. And indeed, shellfish and salmon lovers can rejoice with some pockets of anchovies holding out in the rivers as well. And the reason why this map is falling so high is because it's a nice, safe, friendly, easy to build on, beginner friendly, temperate theme map as well. Flying around the map, we do have some network jank. You definitely want to be ripping out these vanilla clover leaves. These are not efficient ways of moving traffic about. But of course, this is stuff that can be changed yourself. We are, again, unfortunately, returning to the horrendously inefficient rail junctions that we've seen in some of the vanilla maps in these tier lists. But again, this can be changed out to your own accord. There is some fairly dangerous train slopes on this map as well, near the junctions. But again, you can change this if you want. Definitely not a nice slope for a train to be coming down. This is not how trains work, but connections are there anyway. At least you have them, right? And the mountain ranges, nicely terraformed. This is exactly my sort of mountain. Some nice kind of flat valleys nearby and then some ridges, all leading up to a peak. This is within your 81 tile radius as well, so it'll be a while before you get out here. But I hope you can all agree, some very nice kind of mountain foot town opportunities sat at the bottom of all these peaks over here. I do enjoy the landscape of Winfield. And then lots of varying coastline. You have some much more sort of cliff looking vibes over here, okay? So you get some builds up against the cliff face. Then as you move along the coast, it does become much more friendly towards typical coastline building with tourism, beaches available all along here, okay? All your kind of usual favourite styles before the coastline eventually merges back into some more gnarly cliff looking features in and around where the mountains start to rise again. And we also have a train line passing through this area as well. And you've also got a little island out here which does hold some vanilla detailing props. So you could certainly look to colonise this island. You will need 81 tiles to do that. But I think some interesting builds available. Maybe some sort of research facility out here using the high-tech content creator pack. I think I could certainly get on board with a build like that. But otherwise, if you're looking for a fairly safe bet with a temperate theme with all available connections, some nice industry opportunities if not for a little bit lacking in the ore area, lovely coastal opportunities, inland, nicely terraformed rivers, which is important. There are certainly a lot worse temperate maps than Winfield, so for me, it's going to fall into a very healthy A-tier temperate map. Okay guys, that is going to do it for the Parklife map tier list. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, likes, comments and shares really help me out below. Equally as much if you haven't enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a dislike as well. And do let me know your opinions on these maps. Quite a varied bunch with the Parklife DLC, and certainly the worst by a long way is Cavern Coast. But again, if you disagree, please let me know down in the comments below. In the next map tier list, we will combine the final three because Industries, Mass Transit, and the other one only come with 3 maps, so we'll do those all together. So the last map tier list will be 9 maps in total, and then we can finally move on to some other tier list content. Now we have all of the maps out of the way. Otherwise, I will shut up and I will leave it there. Let's thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.